So without further ado, let's start with our first intern. Her name is Nancy Zhu. She is one of the interns that partakes in the Facebook ads management track. So she'll be sharing on what she learned in this experience, as well as what she has gotten out of this internship program. So Nancy, the time is all yours.
Wonderful. Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. I'm Nancy, and I want to apologize first for any background noise today, but thank you all for joining us. I'm an intern for the CCE Soaring Eagles program, Facebook Ad Manager track led by Nina. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of what I'll be discussing today. First, I'll go through what the roles and responsibilities of a Facebook ad manager is. Then I'll go through some data analysis and conclusions that we made over the last couple of months. And then finally, I'll go over some of the conclusions and learnings from the overall experience. Next slide, please. So an overview of what exactly a Facebook ad manager does. The responsibilities I had over the last couple of months included learning how to navigate the Facebook ad space, specifically the CCE page, as well as the Ad Management Center. In addition, I learned how to create ad campaigns and launch ads for our webinars and Chronicles newsletters. And through launching these ads, I was able to implement what CCA was trying to practice, which was targeting ads to specific demographics and audiences to increase our engagement on the platform. And we'll dive more into this later when we look at the analysis. But the final task I had was to analyze these reports and then come up with any findings that could help CCE in the future. And then below is just a quick timeline of my journey. Next slide, please. So how exactly did I conduct these goals and responsibilities? Well, I first launched ads targeting them specifically to audiences that we thought would best fit the events that we hosted. For example, if a webinar was focused on budgeting, we would target those ads to those who are interested in personal finance and so forth. And the second part of the methodology process was the data analysis portion, which included exporting all of the ad reports, organizing the data, and then importing them all onto Tableau, which is a data visualization application. And from there, coming up with conclusions and drawing information from the data that we collected. Next slide, please. So here are the two main findings that we concluded. The first is that the Facebook's demographic overall are just generally predominantly 18 to 44-year-olds that are more female-oriented than males on the platform. Therefore, for an ad that CCE launches and targets towards a younger demographic, such as high schoolers or college students, Facebook might not be as effective as we assumed it would be in doing so and reaching our target audience, just because of Facebook's demographic overall. Nothing on our end, but just Facebook has an older population than we anticipated. And the second finding that we found was that our financial budgeting events that we hosted gathered the highest reach and engagement in comparison to all other ads that we launched before, suggesting the possibility that if we implement the same methods that we used to launch those ads, we could set that as a model and a precedent for future ad launches. So next slide, please. So first, we'll be exploring the finding where young professionals are the largest audience. Below is a heat map of the percentage response separated by age and gender. As you can tell from the circled regions, with the darkest saturation of blue, most event responses are from females between the ages of 25 to 44. In addition, the overall response rate are majority female, making up 68% of the total response. And most of CCE's events are geared towards college and high school students, like I said previously, between the ages of 13 to 24-year-old, which, according to the graph, is not the most engaged audience as we would have anticipated on the Facebook platform. And then next slide, please. And this is the same data, but in a bar graph representation. And here we can clearly see that the percentage of females in orange dominate over males. And in addition, the tallest bar of event responses is between 25 to 34-year-olds. Next slide, please. At first, we were wondering why are CCE's response rates dominated by females, right? But after doing a little bit of Googling and exterior research, we found that this is a general trend for the overall Facebook demographic. And most people are on the platform are just young females between the ages of 18 to 44. And that's 54% of Facebook users are female. And then just using that data and exterior research in conjunction with our graphs, we concluded that maybe if we are in the future launching ads that are more targeted towards the high school and college demographic, or even younger, for example, Facebook might not be the best platform. And we need to keep this in mind and as a consideration whether or not Facebook's overall demographics would affect our reach in the future. Next slide, please. All right. So our next analysis was to figure out the relative campaign effectiveness of each ad. Therefore, we created a quadrant graph with the event responses on the y-axis and the amount of money spent on those campaigns on the x-axis. And each circle, they're all colored, represents a singular CCE ad campaign. And the most effective ads are those with the highest response rate and the lowest cost spent. And this would be the upper left quadrant of the graph. And this is an ideal region that we aim to have all of our ads in. Looking there, we see that there are two specific events in that region that we classify as most effective. And those two events are the financial literacy webinars that we hosted, which have the highest response and lowest cost. And then right next to that, on the upper right-hand side, with the highest response and highest cost, was our CCE Soaring Eagles campaign for our internship program. And on the lower left-hand side quadrant, with the lowest response and lowest cost, we have all other CCE ads. And we hope that in the future we can just move all of those ads to the upper left quadrant where the financial literacy events are. So next slide, please. From this finding, we were wondering what exactly did we do different for that ad campaign and why was it so effective? So we dove into the methodology that we took to have this high response rate. And first, going through just the steps that we went through, we first set up a campaign as soon as the marketing material was ready. And this was about a week before the event. Then we set a budget for the ad, which in this case was $150 total for the 7 days that the ad would be launched. And then we took a deep dive into the demographics and groups that would be most interested in this event, which we classified as high schoolers and college students who are just interested in personal finance and first getting their credit card, as well as diving into, I guess, the real world and being independent for the first time. So we geared it towards, ultimately, at the end of the day, high school students and college students who are interested in the following fields: personal finance, savings, and budgeting. And then we launched the CCE ad and then continued to just follow that and conduct further analysis after the ad was launched. And in the future, for next steps, we hope that we could follow something similar and just do further analysis and see whether or not this could set a precedent for future ads and how effective they can be. In conclusion, I learned that identifying audiences is key when just overall in general marketing as well as launching an ad. I also learned that targeting ads is important for effective spending per ad, and that statistics and data can tell stories about the methods and results of launching ad campaigns. Next slide, please. In addition, from the entire experience overall, I learned how to navigate the Facebook ad space as well as use Tableau, which I never had prior experience in. I also learned that targeting audiences and how to use that to strategically market is very effective and can be very powerful. I also learned how data can unveil stories regarding performance, but additionally, that it's very important to do external research sometimes and consider variables that you might not otherwise have considered in your findings in the case of the Facebook overall demographics. And finally, I learned that it's important to experiment and iterate through your methodology as we continue to refine our strategy and launch ads. It's important to just overall refine our technique for future ad campaigns. Thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. I forgot to mention that we will have a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions for Nancy or for the next presenters, feel free to type into the chat box during the transition of a different presenter, and then we'll collect those questions and address them in the Q&A session. So thank you, Nancy. We learned a lot about the Facebook ad analysis. Okay.